There are a lot of things that I can look back on that really helped define the 70s and 80s for me growing up as a Gen Xer. But something that literally changed my life was being introduced to Dungeons and Dragons. For me, this is one of the greatest things ever created, thanks to Generation X.
Rubik's Cube.
Most of the coolest stuff there is came out of our generation. The following was brought to you by Generation X.
Back around 1977, my brother David was going through chemotherapy, so was spending quite a bit of time at the hospital. One of the other kids there going in for treatment introduced my brother to Dungeons and Dragons as a way to kind of pass the time. My brother knew this would be something that I would love, so he asked to borrow one of the books, and he brought home the Monster Manual. I stayed up almost the entire night reading the thing from cover to cover because I knew he had to return it. After seeing how much I loved the book, my brother brought the Player's Handbook the following week. It was all I could talk about, but having to return the books was almost torturous. But a few weeks later, my brother came home with a surprise. Using the hospital's copy machine, he copied both books in their entirety because he knew that we really couldn't afford to buy them. Now, I'm pretty sure the statute of limitations is up on that, but just for the record, I eventually did get my own official copies of all the books. I fell in love with the game and spent countless hours creating characters and making dungeons. Dungeons and Dragons is a fantasy role-playing game designed by Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson. What made it different from other kind of simulation games that were done back then is that rather than playing a platoon or a squad, you actually had to play a single character that you developed and grew over time. It also required having a dungeon master who has to be part storyteller and part referee. By 1981, Dungeons & Dragons had more than 3 million players worldwide, and the books were selling as fast as they could print them. It's a legacy that is still going strong. One of the greatest things about it is that other than the books, all you needed to play was paper, pencil, graph paper, and your imagination. Oh, and let's definitely not forget some really cool dice. When I say that it changed my life, that isn't an exaggeration. Through playing Dungeons & Dragons, I met people who were just like me, and I suddenly felt like I belonged to a community. Me and my two oldest friends to this day spent hours upon hours playing Dungeons & Dragons and other role-playing games late into the night. Dungeons & Dragons actually sparked a whole series of role-playing games that came after it. You could create and play in entire worlds. And TSR, who published the original game, continued to make campaigns, adventures, and expansions to the game so that there was always something new to explore. Dungeons & Dragons inspired a Saturday morning cartoon and a pretty terrible movie, but the effect it had on the culture is pretty apparent. And it's pretty funny when you hear about various celebrities today that admit that, they were heavy into playing D&D when they were younger, and some even continue to play it today. Dungeons & Dragons took something that I could only really enjoy in books that I read and turned it into something that I could really experience. It makes me happy to see that Dungeons & Dragons in some form or another still lives on. My daughter has her weekly game with her friends just like I did when I was a kid. And that's a little bit about Dungeons & Dragons, the cultural phenomenon that still lives to this day and was brought to you by Generation X.
Subscribe to Gen X Grown Up by clicking right here and enable notifications so you won't miss a thing. Use the comments down below to tell us what you think, and while you're there, a thumbs up would be great too. Please share this online wherever you hang out. Connect with GXG on social networks by clicking right here.